She stood alone in the middle of the dusty road, the wind blowing softly around her, but her eyes burned with quiet fire. People passing by slowed down, sensing something intense in the air, yet no one dared to step closer. Her hands were steady, her face calm, but inside, a storm was building that no one could see. "I don't need saving," she said coldly, her voice sharp enough to push the world away. The words sounded strong, almost unbreakable, but there was a hidden pain buried deep beneath them. Then, from a distance, the cowboy watched her without fear or judgment. He didn't rush, he didn't interrupt. He simply stood there as if he had been waiting for this exact moment. Slowly, a faint smile appeared on his face, not mocking, not proud, but knowing something she had spent her whole life trying to hide. She was known across the town as the strongest woman anyone had ever seen, a person who never asked for help and never showed weakness no matter how hard life became. Every problem that came her way, she faced it alone with silent determination, as if depending on someone else was never an option for her. People watched her with a mix of respect and distance, admiring her courage but feeling uneasy around the walls she had built so carefully. No one truly understood what made her this way, and no one dared to ask. She rarely spoke more than necessary, and her silence often said more than words ever could. But the cowboy was different, because when he looked at her, he did not just see strength or distance, he noticed the small cracks hidden beneath her calm face, the kind of pain she tried so hard to bury when no one could reach. As the days passed, the town continued to see the same unshakable woman walking through life with quiet strength, but when night covered everything in darkness and silence, the truth began to surface in ways no one else could witness. Her steps slowed, her shoulders dropped slightly, and the confidence she carried during the day started to fade into something heavier, something harder to hold together, because the past she had buried so deeply never truly left her. It followed her like a shadow that grew stronger when the world went quiet, bringing back memories she never spoke about, moments filled with loss, betrayal, and nights where she had no one to turn to except herself. And even now those memories pressed against her chest, making it difficult to breathe, yet she refused to let a single tear fall where anyone could see, holding everything inside as if letting it out would break the image she had built so carefully over time. And from a distance, hidden within the stillness of the night, the cowboy noticed every detail she believed was invisible, the way her hands tightened for no reason, the way her eyes searched empty spaces as if expecting something that never came, the way her strength seemed real but also fragile at the same time. And he did not interrupt her silence or step forward too quickly, because he understood that some battles were not meant to be forced open. Instead he stayed patient, watching not with curiosity but with quiet understanding, realizing that her refusal to accept help was not pride but protection, a shield created from years of surviving alone. And as each night passed, his awareness grew deeper, noticing patterns in her loneliness that others ignored, seeing how she stood strong for the world, but slowly fell apart when no one was there to witness it. And though he said nothing, his presence remained steady, as if he was waiting for the moment when her silence would no longer be strong enough to hold everything inside, knowing that behind her unbreakable image was a story filled with pain she had never allowed anyone to hear, a story that was still unfolding in the quiet hours where strength was no longer enough to hide the truth. The quiet tension that had been building between them finally broke on a harsh afternoon when the sun felt heavier than usual and the air carried a strange uneasiness. She was struggling with a task that normally would not slow her down, but something inside her was distracted, her focus slipping just enough to make her movements uncertain, and before she could correct herself, the situation turned difficult in a way she could not fully control, and that was the moment the cowboy stepped in without hesitation, not as a savior but as someone who simply refused to stand still while she carried everything alone, his hand reaching out to steady what was about to fall apart, his presence calm yet firm. But the second she noticed him stepping into her space, something inside her reacted instantly, her expression hardened, her eyes sharp with resistance as if his help was not kindness but a threat to the wall she had spent years building. She pulled back quickly, creating distance between them with a force that surprised even her. And her voice came out stronger than she intended, filled with frustration that had nothing to do with that moment alone. "I told you, I don't need anyone," she said. Each word clear and cutting, meant to push him away completely, yet beneath that strength there was a crack that could no longer stay hidden, because this time her voice trembled just enough to reveal what she had been trying so hard to control, and the silence that followed felt heavier than the words themselves. The cowboy did not react with anger or disappointment, he did not step back in hurt pride or try to argue his place. Instead he stayed exactly where he was, his expression steady, his eyes reflecting something deeper than simple understanding, as if he saw beyond her reaction and into the truth behind it. And that made her even more unsettled because she was used to people either leaving or fighting back, not standing still in quiet patience. Her breathing became uneven for a moment as emotions she had buried began to rise without permission, but she quickly turned away, refusing to let him see more than he already had, trying to regain the control she felt slipping through her fingers. Yet the moment had already changed something between them, because for the first time her strength had not looked unbreakable, and for the first time he had witnessed the fragile edge beneath it. And even as she walked away with the same firm steps the town had always known, there was a slight hesitation that could not be ignored, a silent sign that his presence had reached a place she had never allowed anyone to touch before. And though no more words were spoken, the distance between them no longer felt the same, because something real had surfaced, something neither of them could pretend did not exist anymore. The silence stretched between them as she tried to walk away with steady steps, but something in the air refused to let the moment end so easily, and before the distance could grow any further, he moved forward with calm certainty, not rushing, not forcing, just closing the space she had created, as if he understood that leaving now would only strengthen the wall she was already hiding behind. She stopped without turning back at first, sensing his presence drawing closer in a way that felt different from anything she had experienced before. Not pressure, not control, but something steady and unshaken. And when she finally faced him, her expression was guarded yet uncertain, as though part of her was ready to fight while another part was quietly waiting. He met her gaze without hesitation, his eyes holding no judgment, no pity, only a quiet understanding that seemed to reach beyond her defenses. And for a brief moment, it unsettled her more than anger ever could, because she was used to being misunderstood, used to people seeing only the surface. But he stood there as if he had already seen everything she tried to hide, and instead of turning away or arguing against her words, he simply spoke in a low, steady voice that carried more weight than any loud reaction ever could. "I know," he said, the softness in his tone breaking through the tension instead of adding to it. And before she could respond or rebuild her defenses, he continued with a truth that shifted everything. "I don't want to save you. I need you." The words hung in the air, simple yet powerful, reaching her in a place she had kept locked for years, because no one had ever said something like that to her. No one had ever stood in front of her without trying to fix her or walk away from her strength. And in that moment, her thoughts faltered, her usual certainty slipping as the meaning behind his words settled in. He was not trying to take her independence, he was not seeing her as broken. Instead, he was choosing her exactly as she was, strong, guarded, and still carrying pain. And that realization made her feel something she had not allowed herself to feel in a long time, something unfamiliar yet deeply real. Her breath slowed as the weight of the moment pressed against her chest, her eyes searching his face for any sign of doubt or hidden intention. But there was none, only quiet honesty that did not demand anything in return. And for the first time, the strength she held so tightly began to feel different, not like a shield she had to protect, but like something she no longer had to carry alone. Yet even as that feeling grew, a part of her hesitated, standing on the edge between holding on to everything she had known and stepping into something uncertain, something that required trust. And as the wind moved softly around them, the world seemed to pause, waiting for her to decide whether she would turn away once again or finally allow someone to stand beside her without fear. She remained still as his words settled deep within her, and for the first time in years she did not know how to respond, because nothing in her past had prepared her for someone who did not try to control her strength or walk away from it. His voice had not challenged her independence, yet it had reached a place far beyond it, and that quiet truth began to shake everything she had built around herself. Her thoughts moved quickly, but her body refused to react, as if she was caught between the life she had mastered and the feeling she could no longer ignore. His presence remained steady in front of her, not demanding, not expecting, simply there. And that made it harder for her to hold on to the distance she always created, because there was no pressure to fight against, no force to resist, only a calm understanding that slowly weakened the walls she had trusted. For so long, she felt something rise inside her chest, heavy and unfamiliar, something she had buried beneath years of silence and control. And as she tried to push it back, it only grew stronger. Her breathing became uneven as memories she had locked away began to surface without warning. Moments where she stood alone when she needed someone the most, nights filled with quiet pain she had never shared. And all of it came rushing back with a force that made her strength feel fragile for the first time. Her eyes shifted away from him as if she could escape the feeling, but it followed her, breaking through every layer she had carefully built. And then, without permission, the tears she had held for so long finally reached the surface. Her vision blurred as emotion replaced the control she had always relied on. And though she tried to steady herself, the truth was already visible. She was no longer just the unbreakable woman the town believed her to be. She was someone who had been carrying too much for too long. And in that moment she felt seen in a way that did not make her weak but made her real. Not someone to be fixed, not someone to be judged, but someone who mattered beyond her strength. And that realization hit deeper than any hardship she had faced before, because it changed how she saw herself. The silence between them was no longer empty, it was filled with everything she had never allowed to exist. And as she slowly looked back at him, there was no fear in his expression, no surprise, only a quiet acceptance that told her she did not have to hide anymore. Her hands trembled slightly as she stood there, not from weakness but from the weight finally being released, and even though nothing around them had changed, everything within her felt different, as if the burden she had carried alone was no longer something she had to protect, and for the first time, she did not step back, she did not turn away. She simply stood there, allowing the moment to unfold without resistance, knowing that something inside her had shifted in a way that could never return to what it once was. She stood there for a moment longer, feeling the quiet weight of everything she had been carrying finally begin to lift, not because it disappeared, but because she no longer felt alone in holding it, and for the first time her strength felt lighter, not as a shield she had to defend, but as something she could share without fear. Her eyes met his again, and this time there was no resistance, only a calm acceptance that changed everything between them. She had not lost herself, she had found a deeper version of who she truly was, someone strong yet open, guarded yet no longer unreachable, and as she took a slow step forward instead of away, the silence around them felt different, filled with understanding instead of distance, because she finally realized that strength was never about standing alone against the world. It was about allowing someone to stand beside her without feeling weak, and the cowboy proved it without forcing a single moment, because sometimes the strongest hearts are not looking to be saved, they are simply waiting for someone who sees them and still chooses to stay.